but a wise person stays in control. It's hard to stay in control when the situation around you is out of control. And it's hard to remain calm when the person you're dealing with is acting crazy. In Exodus chapter 32, I found a cracked teapot by the name of Moses. And when we come upon Moses, we find that Moses has had an elongated history of emotional disturbance and anger management. We first encounter Moses when it is that he sees one of his brothers being abused and he can't take it anymore. This obviously predates Martin Luther King's nonviolence reaction, because as soon as he sees man's inhumanity to man, unbridled rage begins to break out, and he kills the one who has offended his brother. This is before his encounter with God. After an encounter with God, we would assume that he now has a handle on his emotions, because people who are not saved believe that when you're saved, you no longer get angry. They believe if you got a relationship with God, there'll be nothing to upset you or unnerve you. But I feel like I got a few hundred witnesses in the room who can testify that even though I'm anointed, I still get angry. When Moses is coming from receiving the 10 Commandments from God, after God has spent 2 chapters having an ongoing dialogue with the founder of liberation theology, telling him how he's going to construct the constitution of a community of citizens, of believers who have been converted, he finds that he has been with God too long for the people who have been waiting. Because while he's been in communion with God, they begin to collect their earrings, their necklaces, their bracelets. They throw them into a furnace and they begin to design a golden calf. Because in the absence of hearing from God, they make up in their mind they've got to worship something. I want to tread lightly to say to somebody, be careful when you feel distant from God that you don't start seeking a substitute. When it is that you cannot hear from God, you'll begin to worship anything that glitters. Anything that looks good can become a god to you. And so since Moses has been gone in the mountain, hearing direction and instruction, the people's patience begins to run thin and short. And they begin under the direction of Aaron, building a god, and they begin worshiping him. When it is that Moses and Joshua is now coming down from the mountain, they hear a sound. And Joshua instinctively believes the sound that I hear is the sound of warfare. Moses says, no, that's not a sound of warfare. The sound would be a little bit different from that. They begin to get a little bit closer off the mountain, and coming off the mountain under closer scrutiny, they said, this sound is not even the sound of victory. They take a few steps further off of the mountain, and Moses then takes a page from the present black church and says, the sound we are now hearing is not of war, it's not of victory, it's just singing. I better pause right here. Something is wrong, ladies and gentlemen, when you come to church and the sound you hear from church does not in fact call you to spiritual warfare, and the sound you're hearing from church does not signal an alarm for victory, but is just singing. I am afraid that too many of our worship encounters have been a worship encounter that does not challenge the people to go into warfare against the enemy, and does not announce that we have in fact overcome the battle from the previous week, but it is just a selection. When I come into church, I do not need to just hear random music. I need to hear a sound that will push me to another place to let the enemy know you might have got the best of me last week. But I am encouraged to know that this week victory shall be mine. I believe that I'm talking to somebody in the room that needs to know that when I shout, know that I'm not shouting randomly. I'm shouting because I just got victory over something. Or I'm shouting because I feel like I'm getting ready to have victory for something. You ain't gonna hear me shouting just for the sake of shouting. When I shout, I've got a spiritual agenda and I've got a spiritual mandate. Would you look at your neighbor and tell him, I've been through so much. I got a right to make noise in church. Hallelujah. If you knew what kind of forces have been trying to defeat me, if you knew what kind of people tried to play me for a sucker, if you knew what kind of things I had to jump over, you would be shouting with me. When you hear me shout, it's because I need to let the enemy know you might have got some, but you just lost one. When you hear me scream, it's because the enemy didn't take my children and didn't take my mind and didn't take my peace. I'm shouting for a reason. Said the sound that I hear is not a random sound, but it is the sound of somebody who's going to war. And when he gets closer to the sound, ladies and gentlemen, he gets angry because he realizes they're singing for no reason. They're singing because they're worshiping a God, hear me, that can't answer prayer. They're singing for no reason because they're worshiping a God that can't heal their body. They're singing for no reason because they're worshiping a God that cannot pay their bill. They're worshiping for no reason because they're worshiping a God who in the time of trouble cannot hide them. But I came to put the spectators on notice. When I worship God, it is not for your amusement. When I worship God, it is not for your entertainment. When I worship God, it is not to impress you. But I'm worshiping God because I owe him so much. Because every day he put food on my table. Every day he clothed me in my right mind. Every day he fought battles on my behalf. That's why when I get to church, I don't beg nobody to praise her. But when I think of the goodness of Jesus and all that he's done for me, my soul cries out, hallelujah. Hallelujah. I'm in Exodus chapter 32. Be seated right where you are. In Exodus 32, ladies and gentlemen, when Moses gets off of that mountain and hears the children of Israel singing, he gets angry. And he gets so angry that the Bible records in verse number 19 of Exodus 32 that he throws his tablets down and does what? He breaks them. I'm not preaching to you. I'm preaching to the person beside you. God would have me announce to you today, do not allow people to make you so angry that you lose what God put in your hand. I can't hear nobody in here. You got to understand that the enemy's trying to push your buttons because he knows what you're carrying. And he's hoping that you will lose and drop your assignment. But I feel like I'm preaching to some people that know the enemy almost ticked me off this week, but the only thing that kept me together is that while I was angry, I held on to what God gave me. While it is that I was upset, I refused to drop the call that God has placed in my life. Be seated right where you are. I'm talking to some people in the room who've been so angry at people and so angry at situations that you were that close to walking away from church. You were that close to giving up your ministry, that close to giving up your assignment. And just before you dropped it, you had to talk to yourself and say, self, they ain't even worth it. Because Because at the end of this, God help me, I'm still going to have my relationship with God. And some of you, God help me, have just narrowly escaped because you keep messing with people who are anointed. And because they're anointed, you assume they're not going to respond. But what you don't know is that while I got my assignment in one hand, I still got a free hand. God, I can't hear nobody. And God better hold me because I'm not as saved as the rest of y'all. I'm trying to deal with my anger. I'm trying to deal with my hostility. And the only thing that keeps me grounded is I got an assignment. Be seated right where you are, please. Somebody say, preach, black man. I'm doing the best I can. Be seated. I'm talking to some people in the room. God help me if I were to lay you on the panoply of psychology and you begin to testify about all of the injuries that you've suffered, all of the people that lied to you and manipulated you and played you for a fool. If you had to recall the family members who should have supported you but walked away from you, if you bring back to your remembrance the relationships you invested in but never got anything out of, it'll make you angry. But I'm so thankful unto God that God gives me a peace that passes all understanding. There's some of us every now and again when we walk, we got to put our hand in our pocket, because if the wrong person says the wrong thing at the wrong time, you on your way to Jessup. I can't hear nobody, but you got to say, Lord, you got to fight this for me. Look at your neighbor, tell him, I can tell you ain't never been angry. I'm talking about being so angry, God help me, that you got tears getting ready to fall. Not because you're sad, but because you can't believe they had the gall to play you like that. I'm talking about being so angry where you want to cuss, and every time cussing comes out, you just remain silent, and they got the nerve to want to talk to you, and they don't know, I can't talk right now. If I start talking, no way you gonna know what I'm trying to say. Hallelujah. Be seated, please. Hallelujah. I need 800 of y'all to just talk back to me and shout, I've been angry. Be seated right where you are. Moses gets so angry that he breaks up this golden calf, and watch what happens, ladies and gentlemen. He takes the pieces of the broken calf and puts it in the water. He puts it in the water, and verse number 20 of Exodus 32 messes me up, and makes them drink it. He makes them drink it because he said, I want y'all to have a taste of what it is that I feel. And I came to 500 of you. The enemy cannot stand you. He can't stand you because of all of the atrocities you've endured. You still not bitter. God, I can't hear nobody in here. You can still speak to people. You can still be nice at a distance. You can still hold a conversation because you refuse to let it make you bitter. Say something. Moses made them drink it. Says, I want y'all to taste what it is that I feel. Oh my God. And I want to say to somebody in the room who's got backed up anger in your mouth, you got to get that bitterness out of your mouth, because you are contaminating your flow. Did you forget that blessings and curses come out of the same mouth? And if your mouth is bitter, you're not going to be able to speak the blessings of the Lord over your life. Look at the person beside you. Tell them, some years ago I wouldn't have been able to say anything nice, but in spite of what I've been through, I want to speak a blessing over your life. Would you look at your neighbor, tell them, I don't know if you ever been angry like I've been angry, but here's what the Lord wanted me to tell you. I hope I can finish the whole sentence. The Lord will make your enemies your foot. I can't hear nobody in here. I dare you to shout like weeping may endure for a night, but joy. Hallelujah. Be seated right where you are. Hallelujah. Be seated right where you are. Hallelujah. I'm only talking to about 300 of y'all in the room. I dare you to just elbow somebody on either side of you. Tell them I've been angry. I've been angry. Find somebody else. Tell them you don't want to see me when I'm angry. I turned into a whole nother person. I'm knocking everything down till I get it resolved. I ain't going to be shy. I ain't going to be quiet. I'm going to dress it till it's settled. Be seated right where you are, please, sir. Be seated right where you are. I'm betting there's a group that emanated out of California some years ago because they were distressed and distraught about what was happening in our nation unchecked. It was, in fact, almost in epidemic